It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. As always, I'm Paul David. It's great to have you in studio with us today. Merilee Fowler from MATForce is in studio. Recently, they had a youth survey come back, and they had a lunch and learn. Right, Merilee?
We did.
On the 24th.
Yes.
And the public is always invited. The lunch and learns are really a neat idea. They've been around for quite a few years now, right?
Yeah, I think we've been doing them from the beginning. So for 13 years, we've been doing lunch and learns.
So lunch and learn takes place not only in the Verde Valley, but in the Prescott side at the Annex buildings, correct? And then they're teleconferenced together so you can see what the other side's doing. You bring a bag lunch or whatever, and you sit down and you can learn about, I guess, drug problems that are going on in our county.
All different topics, but this last time was on the Arizona Youth Survey.
The youth survey. And I saw that, and we did a little story about it, and we mentioned about the lunch and learn. But I did want Merilee to come in and talk about the youth survey and find out exactly what was found in our students over this last year in terms of what they're getting into. What's the popular thing, what's not so popular anymore, and stuff like that. That's what you guys wound up learning?
Exactly. So just for people to know what the Arizona Youth Survey is, it's a survey that's done by the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission, and it's every even year. And so we're really thankful to Yavapai County Schools because a lot of our schools do participate. This year our sample size was 1,751 kids that took the survey, so 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students. And they're asked, it's actually 170 questions, so it's a lot of different information. But we learn a lot about, youth use, what substances that kids are using, what substances are going up, what substances are going down, why they use, where they're getting their drugs, a lot about risk and protective factors. So it's a really great survey for us to look at and determine strategies on what we need to be working on.
Oh, wow. So that's pretty in-depth, 170 questions.
170.
Now, how do you decide which schools participate, which kids participate?
This is all up to the individual schools. So the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission will come in and implement the survey anywhere, any school that will allow them in. So public schools, charter schools, private schools, any school. So in Yavapai County this last go-round, we had 10 different districts that participated and 14 different schools that participated. Okay. So we know that there were schools in Prescott Valley, Camp Verde, Cottonwood, Clarkdale. This year we were disappointed that Sedona did not participate, so we didn't get data from that school. But again, it's up to the individual schools to decide if they will take part in the survey. Okay.
Is there a parent permission thing the kids have to have before they can take a survey like this?
Actually, with Arizona law right now, they're not required to have that.
Okay.
So they can take it without the parents' permission. I believe that there's a process where the parents give overall permission at the beginning of the year, and then that covers this survey.
Gotcha. Okay. So why 8th, 10th, and 12th? Why are those the key years?
I would believe the reason is that, one of the questions that they ask too is the kids that say that they're using a substance, when did they start using that substance? And so we call that age of initiation, which is a very important data point for us. And primarily the age of initiation, depending on the different substance, is between 11 and 13. So I think that when we say 8th, 10th, and 12th grade, we know that we're getting in those ages where kids are beginning to dabble in drugs if they make that choice. The great news, though, is we know a majority of kids don't do drugs, and so that's what we're excited about also.
That is good, too, because, doing the news for as long as I've been doing it, it's really sad to just... I was telling Merilee before the show, we had this crackdown on meth years ago, and that's when MATForce came about, because methamphetamine was such a huge thing in Yavapai County. But you can actually see the trends, which drug is popular, from time to time, because we'll do stories about how there's this overwhelming amount of heroin in the area. And then all of a sudden that just kind of fades away. And then all of a sudden cocaine. And you get little shipments of marijuana here and there. That kind of always seems to happen. And I've had DPS in here where they talk about marijuana as just when the crops are ripe, that's when you start seeing it traveling through the area. But then methamphetamine has reared its head again, and it has become really prominent. And we were talking before the show that Sheila Polk years ago had that 5 to 15 years automatically put on there, where if you were caught transporting or dealing meth, it was an automatic 5 to 15 years. There was no 1 strike, 2 strike, 3 strike, you're down the road. And then the whole state joined in on that effort. And for some reason, it does not seem to be kind of an instigate to not want to drive that stuff through the state.
Right.
So that's weird.
And I think it's because of the quantities of meth now that are available. You know, there's super labs in Mexico that are producing huge quantities of meth, and you're exactly right. We've seen it come back with a vengeance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not been, you know, a few bindles here, a few bindles there. I mean, we're talking about pounds here.
Yes.
Navajo County Sheriff's Office had 5 or 6 pounds. YCSO's had multiple pounds. And it's just amazing to me just how much of it's coming through. And there have been some big heroin busts, too. I think there was a $12,000 heroin bust just a week or so ago with YCSO. So it's still coming through.
It sure is. And when you talk about it, it seems like we have an overdose fatality review board that we're looking at overdose deaths, and it seems that often when people are struggling with addiction or use disorder, they're using multiple drugs. You know, so often it's poly drug use, and it's what's available. You know, and that's one of the things I really like about the Arizona Youth Survey. It asks the kids why they choose to use, and that's something that we need to get to the bottom, because as you said, when one drug goes down, another goes up, and we need to figure out, you know, why is it that people are seeking these drugs and want to alter their mind, and learn more about, you know, use disorders and addiction and what we can do to solve this problem.
So with the survey done, 170 questions, which is a lot of information for a kid to, the surveys are probably very accurate too. I would imagine the kids are pretty honest. They're anonymous.
Yes,
the surveys are anonymous.
Yes,
so.
Totally anonymous. And there are mechanisms in the survey too. They ask a few questions to determine if somebody is not being truthful. So there's a fake drug in the survey, and all of those surveys are removed from the data. So it's a very valid survey. When you compare our information, again, with all of these questions and all the data that is compiled, you can compare it with the state data, and you can see that the trends are very similar. So that to me shows that this is an accurate survey.
That was going to be a question I had there, was just how do we know which, you know, kid just decided he was going to push everything that was horrible on the sheet of paper, but there's
yes, and they're taken out of the
taken
data.
Out of there. Okay. So what's the spark? What gets it going? What makes somebody say, you know what, I'm going to shoot some meth and try it out?
Well, I guess for that, when you ask the kids now, and again, we have to think about these are youth, and we're not seeing kids using meth. It's very, very few kids that use those hard drugs of heroin and meth. What we see, the primary substances that our youth are abusing, and it's interesting, for the first time in 2018, it's not alcohol as our #1 substance. That has been consistently since the survey was done, that the #1 substance that youth abuse is alcohol. But now with vaping, electronic cigarettes actually exceeded the number of youth that are using alcohol. So we have different indicators. There's lifetime use, and that's if anyone's ever tried a substance. But what we really like to look at is 30-day use, because that's more pointing to regular use. So with the 30-day use, 24.5% of the 8th, 10th, and 12th graders that were surveyed said that they had used an e-cigarette in the last 30 days. And it's really interesting. They only asked about electronic cigarettes from 2016 and 2018. So in 2016, the number was 14.4%. So we went from 14.4% to 24.5% of kids saying they regularly use e-cigarettes. So in that 2-year period, that was a 70% increase with kids using e-cigarettes. So more than alcohol. Alcohol was #2 with 21.6% of the kids said that they regularly use alcohol. Marijuana is #3 with 18.2% of the kids. And then cigarettes, is the fourth that was used on a regular basis. So when you say, why do they use meth? You know, kids are not using meth. That's a little bit later down the road, but we call them, and people will sometimes argue this, but the gateway drugs, you know, what do they start out with? It's alcohol, marijuana, tobacco are the prominent drugs that we're seeing. And when we ask the kids why they're using those substances, it's really interesting. There's the answers that are not a surprise, like to get high and to have fun. But what we're really concerned about is a significant number of the kids say that they use substances to deal with stress. And this year they broke the survey down into stress in school, stress with peers, stress with family, stress in community. And the #1 answer in those 4 categories was stress in school. Over 36% of the kids that use substances said that they do it because of stress in school. So that was a really interesting answer on this survey.
Oh, wow. We have to take a break, okay? Merilee Fowler is in studio from MATForce. We're talking about the youth survey for 2018 that was just completed. We're talking more about that when we come back. MATForce.org is the website. Phone number 928-300-7129. Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Welcome back to Countywide. Great to have you along. Merilee Fowler from MATForce in studio today. Phone number, correction, 928-708-0100. Website is matforce.org. Is the youth survey post on matforce.org?
It is.
It's
on our
okay.
website.
So we can find it there. All right, good deal. All right, so 1,700 students, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades. Vaping is #1.
Vaping is #1.
Now, okay, I got to ask this. Does it talk about how these kids are getting these things or being introduced to these things?
It does.
Okay.
Well, it asks the kids, for each substance. So if they've reported that they use a substance, where they're getting the substance. And probably the #1 answer is always friends and family.
Friends and family.
Friends and family. And it varies based on the substance. Of course, when they ask the kids about prescription drugs, where they're getting it, that varies. It's friends and families. And we talk about safely storing your medication so that they're not going to the medicine cabinet, but they're also occasionally getting it from doctors, and so there's a whole host of answers for each different substance.
And we want to keep those out of the hands. We might as well plug the Dump the Drug events that MATForce is always sponsoring as well around the county.
Right, and we're really grateful now that there's the 13 drop boxes at our law enforcement agencies, so you don't even have to wait for a Dump the Drugs event. You can go to the law enforcement agency and drop off your unnecessary prescription drugs.
And they incinerate them.
Right.
They get rid of them.
Can you believe we've collected 34,000 pounds of medication since we started doing that?
34 pounds?
34,000 pounds.
Oh, I don't think you said the 1,000 before.
34,000 pounds.
Okay. Yeah, I can. I remember the first few years we did that, we had a lot of vitamins showing up and things like that, but doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter, right? If it's
Right.
expired, whatever, get rid of it, but yeah. Okay, wow. So this person also came in, and her name was Katie Clark. She's the director of the Statistical Analysis Center of the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission. She was actually at the Lunch and Learn, right?
Yes,
and she
she
gave
presented.
She gave the presentation. Now, there were some recommendations as to what we can do, or is there something else that we need to make sure we get in that the survey did that was pretty interesting to MATForce?
Well, I'd like to talk about some trends because I think that that's important.
Sure.
So I mentioned e-cigarettes, that they've only done that for the last 2 rounds of the survey, so we're very concerned about what's happening with e-cigarettes and kids vaping and using the Juul devices and things. But we have some good news. So when we look at alcohol, I mentioned that now it's the number 2 substance that kids are abusing, but we've had some really good reductions. This survey has been happening since 2004, but we've been tracking for the last 10 years the trends, and we've gone from kids, 35.7% of our kids regularly using alcohol to now 21.6. So that's a 39% reduction, and I think we need to celebrate, that success. We've mentioned with dump the drugs and prescription drugs, that was a huge concern of ours in 2010 when we were noticing, people were dying, young people were dying from prescription drug abuse. And we started doing a lot of work around that, educating kids on the risks and harms. But in 2008, when that survey was done, 15.3% of the kids, again, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, said that they were regular users abusing prescription medication. Huge concern. This survey, 2018, it was down to 3.7%. And so that's a 76% reduction. And so that's wonderful news for us that kids realize the risks and harms of prescription medication and are not abusing those to the extent. Marijuana is a huge concern of ours. We've had a cultural shift with it being way more acceptable now, and so we've seen the opposite trend with marijuana. The survey in 2008, it was 12.6% of the kids said that they regularly used marijuana. In 2018, it's up to 18.2%. So that's another drug that we're concerned about because of the upward trend. We're up to 44%, a 44% increase in kids regularly using marijuana. And they just a lot of times are not, aware of the risks and harms of that drug. So we're really concerned about that trend.
Well, that is good news, though.
Yeah, good news.
Yeah.
Good news with alcohol and prescription drugs.
But like we were talking about earlier, how one drug kind of fades out for a little while because there's so much media blitz on it and the police are really looking for it.
Right.
Something else rears its head.
Right.
And so here we got, cigarette use is down, but e-cigarette use jumped up.
Right.
So here's something new that comes in to kind of replace the old.
Yeah. Can I mention one other thing I think is interesting with marijuana too? You talked about the survey asking the kids where they get the substance. And another concern that we have with marijuana is that we've seen a huge increase in kids that are getting the marijuana from people that have a medical marijuana card. In fact, in the 2018 survey, it was 27.3%. So close to a third of the kids that say they use marijuana are getting it from a medical marijuana card holder. And another concerning answer to that was 12.2% of the kids that use marijuana said that they actually purchased it from a dispensary. So those are a couple areas that we know we need to do some more education and enforcement around to make sure that that they're not illegally getting marijuana from those 2 sources.
Kids can't go into those places to buy that stuff.
They're not supposed to.
Right.
You can have a card if you're 18, and if you're under that age, you have to have 2 parents and 2 doctors, that are approving that. But we're sure that kids are getting it illegally from dispensaries, and so we want to make sure that that's not happening.
Sure, and if I had a medical marijuana card, and we just talked about it, being careful where you put your prescriptions, you got to treat that like a prescription. So is that being kept out of an area where somebody can come in and take a little bit every so often?
Exactly. So we know that there needs to be more regulation in those areas.
Get a safe.
That's right.
Put it in a safe.
That's right.
Oh wow! So that is some interesting information. Okay, so can we jump into kind of what are some of the recommended things that we should be doing to kind of continue this trend of this downward spiral we got?
Absolutely. So Katie did have some recommendations for us, and one that I want to mention that.
We got to take a break.
Okay, sorry.
We have to take a break. All right. Oh, I didn't realize it was that time already. Okay, Merilee Fowler from MATForce is in the studio today. Their website is matforce.org. Stick around, Countywide, back in just a couple minutes.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
How I define making? In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason, and that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made: painting, sculpture, welding, all of that.
Yellow is positive.
When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back. We've got just a few minutes left of the program. We do want to jump into some of the strategies that parents and guardians and educators and everybody can use to kind of help this downward trend that we're seeing right now, at least in a couple of things.
Right.
So what are those?
Well, you know, it's interesting when we ask the kids who do not use substances why they chose not to, 76% of those kids say they don't use substances because their parents disapprove of it. And so my message to parents is talk to your kids. Tell them that you disapprove of those substances. Another thing that's interesting with this survey is 50% of the kids said that their parents have not talked to them about drugs, the risks and harms of drugs and alcohol. And we know perception of risk, when a student realizes that there is a risk associated with that substance, they are less likely to use it. So we just, number one, encourage parents, talk to your kids, tell them the true scientific harms about using substances. One statistic that I think is really important for us to realize is 9 of 10 people that struggle with use disorders, that are addicted to a drug or a substance, began using as a teenager. And that's why it's so important to us that we work to prevent kids from ever starting to use these substances, because we don't want them to become addicted. The adolescent brain, it's a very dangerous time to be putting those substances into their bodies. And so we just encourage schools to consider the stress. You know, think about how can we teach kids good coping skills so that they're not feeling that stress and think that they need to use to to inappropriately handle, the stress that they're dealing with. Right, exactly. It's going to cause them more stress. Yeah. So, as a society, we want to protect our kids and make sure that they make good choices.
But Merilee, I don't know anything about drugs. How am I supposed to talk to my kid about something I know nothing about? My kid probably knows more than I do.
Right. And that's where, again, you've mentioned our website. There's a lot of great resources for parents. We have talk kits that we can, we'd even be willing to mail them out to people if they, on how to talk to your kids and provide them the information that they need, to make good choices and decide not to use these substances.
Yeah, so you could Google how to talk to kids about drugs, and
the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, I think they're now called Drug-Free Kids, has wonderful information for parents. And it's just such an important conversation for us to have and, make them aware.
Yeah, wow. So those are some good numbers. Anything that stands out to you that's really alarming in the last 60 seconds here?
Well, can I just say that, what's really alarming right now is fentanyl. And, that people have probably heard, we've had some young people that have died of fentanyl overdoses. They probably were not aware of the risks and harms. Fentanyl is now being cut into other drugs. They're finding it in cocaine. It's being cut into heroin. And a very, very small dose of fentanyl is lethal, especially for people that are opioid naive, that have not used these substances substances. So please, this is not a time to be messing around with any drugs because of the danger of fentanyl out there right now.
Yeah, and those of us who don't know much about fentanyl, it just came into the news just a few years ago when YCSO had a big bust on I-40 of that stuff. I've got somebody I'm hoping is going to be able to come in here from the PANT team, Partners Against Narcotics Trafficking, on February 5th to do the county-wide show to talk about fentanyl and just what it is and all that good stuff. Merilee, thank you so much. And the survey again is on MATForce.org, so people can go there and find out more. And the phone number is 928-708-0100. That's today's Countywide. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.